How's it going, hockey fans? Hope you're all doing well today. Welcome to the Hockey Stop, your source for all hockey news, hockey opinions, and hockey highlights. So in this video, we're talking about the Chicago Blackhawks versus the Edmonton Oilers in the first round play-in series. And of course, the Edmonton Oilers were very close to getting a bye from this play-in series, being close to one of the top 4 teams in the West, whereas the Chicago Blackhawks barely makes this play-in series. They likely weren't going to make the playoffs at all, but because of this 24-team format, they do make it in, and they're playing the Edmonton Oilers. So in this video, I want to talk about the offenses, defenses, the goaltending, and my predictions for the series. To start out with offense for the Oilers, they have 2 of the best players in the NHL, and Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. 2 incredible top centers for this team. It's crazy how a team could have so much talent right up front. It kind of reminds me of, back when Malkin and Crosby were there in the prime. To have 2 top centers like that is so lucky, and it's dangerous, and it's what has the Oilers to be poised to be contenders for many years to come, in my opinion. Of course, Draisaitl, 110 points in 71 games, ridiculous numbers, and absolutely, a potential player for both the Hart Trophy and the Ted Lindsay. So we'll see how that goes. And of course, Connor McDavid, no slouch himself, 97 points in 64 games, does play 7 less games, but still puts up ridiculous numbers. And of course, defensively, they're not quite as strong compared to some other players in the league. Specifically, Draisaitl sometimes struggles on his own end, but regardless, with those kinds of numbers, they're ridiculous impact players for this team. And I think with the Oilers the past several seasons, one thing they struggled with, despite having such top scorers in Draisaitl and McDavid, was depth scoring, and that's something they've been actually pretty strong with this season. I feel like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has had a really solid season. Putting up 61 points, 65 games, point-a-game player. He's trying to really become that player that he was expected to be as the first overall pick in 2011. Zach Kassian, physical, heavy, hitting guy. Who's good for most teams' depth. He's been putting up some points too. 34 points, and particularly 15 goals, which is not bad for him. He's having a pretty good season himself. And of course, the acquisition of James Neal and the Lucic trade, great trade for the Oilers. Of course, 2 not so great contracts, but Neal's been having a pretty decent season with the Oilers. Getting those 19 goals already in 55 games. Pretty solid stuff from him. He started off incredibly hot. He did cool down a bit as the season went along, but still a fantastic depth player for sure. Of course, they got Kyler Yamamoto, their young draft pick from 2017. He's pretty short, but he's been a solid producer for the Oilers lately. He is about a point a game, and he's looking to be, a strong depth producer for this team for many years to come, for sure. A solid winger for this team, and he's young, so that's something that Oilers fans definitely have a lot to be excited about. Looking at the Chicago Blackhawks, of course, there's a lot of familiar names. Patrick Kane leads the way. One of the best wingers in the NHL, no doubt about it. Another good season for him, 84 points in 70 games. And of course, you got centerman Jonathan Toews, one of the leaders in this team, of course, the captain, another 60 points, 70 games played. But I think with Jonathan Toews, it's more than just the points that he produces. He's an overall fantastic centerman, plays very well on his own end, and, very responsible, great playmaker, great skater, and he's such a leader for this team. So, his numbers might not really pop out at you, but he's a superstar. And of course, he's always a strong leader for Chicago Blackhawks, as shown through the 3 cups he's led them to. They got, a lot of depth scoring from Kubalik, their rookie. He's been a goal scorer. I don't think Blackhawk fans expect him to be this good. 30 goals in 68 games in his rookie season. Very impressive stuff for him for sure. Dylan Strome, he had a bit of a regression year this season. He puts up 38 points in 58 games. Not bad, but I think he did kind of overachieve a bit last season, and these seem to be a little more realistic numbers for him. Same goes with DeBrincat. He put up ridiculous numbers last season. It hasn't been quite as overwhelming this season, 45 points, 70 games. I think these numbers aren't addicted to the kind of player he is. I think he still is a much better player than that. I kind of see him being a usual 60 to 70 point guy, and Blackhawks have struggled this season, so I think that's a big cause of his regression in points this season. But of course, they also got Brandon Saad, solid winger depth kind of guy to have for sure. Alexander Nylander's been pretty decent in the since they traded to acquire for him. Overall they have some pretty solid depth scoring. Of course, they got Kirby Dach too, the rookie, drafted in 2019, 3rd overall. He's been playing, I would say, a little above expectations. He actually outproduced Jack Hughes' 1st overall pick, and I think tied Kaapo Kakko in points. So pretty good season for Kirby Dach. But yeah, when you look at offenses, I think Edmonton has a much stronger offense up front. I love Toews and Kane, but I think right now Draisaitl and McDavid is a much stronger, combo. Of course, both of them being centers, so they drive the first two lines, and they can produce an even a higher level at this point. I think Oilers too definitely have a bit more offensive scoring than the Chicago Blackhawks, and that's a big reason why they were better in the standings. And I think the Oilers definitely get, lead against the Chicago Blackhawks in terms of their offense. Now looking at defense, both teams don't have the best defense. That's just, kind of how it is. Oilers defense definitely is led by, Oscar Klefbom, has been a pretty solid producer for them offensively. He's trying to improve his defensive game. It's been, not the best, but, he's kind of one of their leaders for sure. Another big leader for them is Darnell Nurse, the big defenseman younger defenseman they have, can produce offensively, is better defensively, and definitely, grind some minutes. So he's, been a good player for this team for sure. Of course, you got Ethan Bear, the young guy, he is playing again this season after playing, limited amount of games a couple years ago, and starting to confirm, his place in the roster, looking pretty solid. And then, of course, you got Chris Russell and Adam Larson too, depth guys, they won't produce much offensively, but play, I guess, a bit of a stronger defensive game, which is something the Oilers need. But nothing really strikes out at you. Like, they don't have any superstar defensemen by any means. And generally speaking, some of them can kind of produce offensively, but I think kind of the consensus is the fact that the defense part of their games aren't the best for the most part, and that's why Oilers give up a lot of shots, and the goaltenders definitely face a lot of shots, have to make a lot of saves. Chicago Blackhawks definitely not the best defense either. Of course, you got their star Duncan Keith. He's starting to regress for sure, not putting as much offensively, but still being pretty sound defensively. Otherwise they also have players like Connor Murphy has been kind of solid. They traded Eric Gustafsson. The trade deadline, he produced ridiculously the year before. This year he's not been, producing as much, which was expected. He overachieved last season, but they don't have his services this year for the playoffs because, of course, they got traded. Oli Mata. They have Adam Boquist, the young defenseman, rookie season, been playing all right. Definitely not probably quite to the expectations as some Chicago Blackhawks fans expected, but he's been all right. And of course, got Colin DeHaan, pretty solid defensive defenseman, and he's actually been having a pretty decent season in that way. But overall, nothing really overwhelming. Of course, they also have Brent Seabrook, which, oh man, he has regressed hardcore. Fantastic piece for this, this team in their cup runs, but he's getting older and he is not, producing too much anymore. And overall, his game has been pretty weak. So both teams have pretty weak defense. If I were to compare the two, it's hard. I would probably say the Edmonton Oilers might have a slight lead. Honestly, I'm not even sure about that though. I think maybe because the Blackhawks did end up trading with one of their defensemen, Eric Gustafsson, maybe give the edge for the Oilers, but both defenses are not very good. Last but not least, we look at goaltending. So the Oilers, they had the tandem in Koskinen and Mike Smith. Mikko Koskinen had a pretty good season. He had a .917 save percentage and played a few less starts than Mike Smith, but overall, played very strong the whole way through. Had a pretty similar win-loss record to Mike Smith. Mike Smith didn't have as all a good of a season. Only a .902 save percentage, higher goals against average, but actually ended up getting one more win and playing several more games. But compared to the two, Mikko Koskinen is my starter for the Oilers. We played a lot better. Might not be the stick handler of Mike Smith, and might not have the experience of Mike Smith, but I think he's the better goaltender at this moment, and that's who they'd have to roll through with. And he's, I think, an above average goaltender of the league. Not by much, but I would say he's a bit above average. Chicago Blackhawks, of course, they were running with Robin Lehner before they traded him. He was playing, very well for this team, but of course they traded him to Vegas. So really their guy, as he's been for a long time, Corey Crawford, definitely one of the premier goaltenders in this league, for quite a while, quite a few seasons. And he's having not a bad season, a .917 save percentage at 35 years old is very impressive. He's a leader, he's got that experience. But I just think with, how, young Koskinen is, the fact that they have two goaltenders that they can work with who both, could definitely play well for this team, I do give the edge for the Oilers for goaltending. So you look down through, edge for the Oilers in offense, pretty tight on defense, maybe a slight edge to the Oilers. And goaltender-wise, I would probably give the edge to the Oilers. So yeah, I do expect the Oilers to beat the Chicago Blackhawks. I'm going to say in 4 games. The Blackhawks, still have, a lot of players who have a lot of experience in the playoffs, experience in getting, 3 Stanley Cups. So, with Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews and Duncan Keith and, of course, Corey Crawford in goal, I could definitely see them stealing a game. But I think the Oilers, they have, a very overwhelming offense. They've improved their offensive depth, and they have some pretty strong goaltending themselves. So I think you just got to give the edge to the Oilers. I say in 4 games, and I think this team could do quite a bit of damage in the playoffs. But you never know. Chicago Blackhawks could steal a few games and maybe push for a 5-game win, but I don't know. I don't really see it from them. I think this season, Edmonton Oilers beat the Chicago Blackhawks in 4 games to go on to the next round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. So thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if you agree, disagree. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.